This is the world of Salesforce and Dropbox, HubSpot and Evernote, a world unthinkable without cloud software services. Most businesses and consumers use SaaS every day to get work done. Driven by the internet and ever-expanding availability of bandwidth, SaaS has come to dominate our lives in a very short span of time. But developing a defining service, often ahead of its time, getting users to engage, secure funding, protect IP, and building a truly remarkable and successful SaaS is not an easy task. SAAStories brings conversations with the dreamers and visionaries who dared to think ahead. How they built their SaaS, genesis, struggles, trials, tribulations, and eventually success. Welcome to SAAStories. Thank you for your time and for joining us on this session. I have a favor to ask. While you continue to listen to the podcast, please leave a comment or rating at iTunes or wherever else you get your podcasts from. I personally look at each comment and will give a shout out to each of you in our next episodes. It means a lot to hear from you. Welcome to this exciting new episode of SAAStories with a very special guest, Vinod Muthukrishnan, Chief Growth Officer of Cisco's Contact Center Business Unit and the co-founder of the customer experience platform CloudCherry, acquired by Cisco in 2019.
Look, 200 years ago, business was n equal to 1. You had one store, one restaurant, one whatever, right? You knew every customer when they walked in. Fast forward 200 years and n equal to 1,000, right? You have 1,000 stores, 1,000 points of presence, or you have a website. Now thousands of customers have their own little journey. How do you replicate that same human connect and experience in this new normal? How do you give the business owner or the brand owner the ability to vicariously live each customer's journey, learn from it, and create the experience the customer wants, right? And that is really the problem, the solution to which we thought we were going to start building. And that is what ultimately became CloudCherry. We just built everything first principles, and some of the things our product still does, like a very unique journey-based approach, which everyone starts to do, but nobody was doing it early. Everyone built a survey engine. We built a customer journey engine. Everyone built a survey platform that aggregated results, and then you saw some dashboards. We built our entire dashboard that what's the quantification of delight? All our data and visualization flows backwards from a number or an outcome, right? And it flows backward. If you take these two elements, you realize how different we are technologically, product-wise from anybody in competition. So ignorance was definitely bliss for us, but I do not recommend it for everybody.
Vinod Muthukrishnan is currently the Chief Growth Officer of Cisco's Contact Center Business Unit. In this role, Vinod leads all go-to-market activities of the business unit, including strategic communications, marketing, and partner and sales enablement. He was previously co-founder CEO of CloudCherry, a customer experience management platform, which was acquired by Cisco in November 2019. Prior to that, he spent 7 years at sea as a first officer before running global sales at Market Simplified. Based in the Bay Area, Vinod enjoys cricket and expanding his library of leadership and P.G. Woodhouse books. Now, on to this episode of SAAStories with Vinod Muthukrishnan. Vinod, welcome to SAAStories. I'm delighted to have you in the show. You know, I was there at your session of SaaS Bhumi, and what straight away sort of hit me was the amount of candor you brought to your talk, and that was very, very refreshing because typically people talk about success because yours is a success story, but you are one of those who said that it's not what you see only. There's a lot going on at the back, and there are a lot of things that you need to learn. So that was really nice, and it took me about a year to get you on the show. So, but I'm really glad that you're here.
I'm really happy to be here, and I'm sorry it took a year. It's been that kind of a year. Let's just blame it on 2020.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. To start with, let's go right at the beginning, even before CloudCherry was CloudCherry. When you were sort of thinking about doing it, where were you and how did this come about? The whole idea that you need to do this particular idea and you need to pursue this into a company.
So, sure. I started my career in the Merchant Navy. I spent 9 years at sea, nothing to do with technology or the world of startups. And that was from 1997 to 2006. And in 2006, I met a very close friend of mine, a lot of serendipity involved, who was also my classmate. I always call him my mentor as far as startups go. Long story short, not to take up too much time, one afternoon going out for coffee with him and his co-founder ended up with me quitting the Merchant Navy, joining his startup. And the idea was a 3-month experiment. I ended up spending 7 years there. And I always thought when my break got over and the call came, I'd just go back to ship. And this seemed like a nice way to spend my vacation. Ended up doing that for 7 years, building the global business for that startup, and just never going back to sea. So that's how I came to the moment. And two things were happening. One, after 7 years there, I knew I wanted to learn more, expand my horizons. You feel like you're a frog in a well. So I thought the way to expand my horizons was education. And I went to my cousin, who then was the CEO at the Great Lakes Institute of Management in Chennai. And he had always been, again, my hero growing up. And I always wanted to emulate him. So I went to him and I said, where should I go to school? And being the person that he is, instead of directing me to a school, he and I ended up starting CloudCherry along with a couple of other folks. But he put forth an idea, and the question that struck me was and that's guided my thinking for the rest of my life, is we kind of had a poser, which was, how many brands do you know that you love and that have your undying loyalty? And you cannot count them on your fingertips, right? And you knew just how much companies were investing in acquiring you as customers. So there's a massive delta between like how much was spent in acquiring customers, right? And how fickle customer love and loyalty was. And hence, as an end customer, I felt that my customer experience problem was unsolved. And when you build for yourself, you end up building a good company. So that was the question that both of us commonly thought of. And that's how I came about to start CloudCherry.
Fantastic. So what did you think that you needed to build? Which part did you think? I mean, I understand the context, but what did you think would solve that problem?
No, great point. So this was actually paraphrased best by Vijay. So we had a small founding team, and Vijay, I always call, was the spiritual founder of CloudCherry in any, and chronologically you can even call him the real founder, because he built a little prototype with a very small team of 2 developers who are still with us, by the way. Did the CloudCherry journey, are at Cisco, and just are some of the finest people I know. At two developers. And his thing was, look, 200 years ago, business was n equal to 1. You had one store, one restaurant, one whatever, right? You knew every customer when they walked in. If you had a restaurant and someone was eating, you knew they were, like, the food was not okay because you were looking at every single customer, right? Now, fast forward 200 years, and you knew where they came from, their dog's name, and, that was the intimacy there. Fast forward 200 years, and n equal to 1,000, right? You have 1,000 stores, 1,000 points of presence, or you have a website. Now, thousands of customers have their own little journey. How do you replicate that same human connect and experience in this new normal, right? How do you give the business owner or the brand owner the ability to vicariously live each customer's journey, learn from it, and create the experience the customer wants, right? And that is really the problem, the solution to which we thought we were going to start building. And that is what ultimately became CloudCherry.
Interesting. So tell me, at that point, did you look around and see, are there competing products? What are they doing? Because obviously this thought would be there, right? So in the ether, it'll be there. There'll be like 5 guys thinking of the same thing, like at any point in time, right? So what did you see, and how was your approach to building CloudCherry different?
In movies you have that do not try this at home. So please do not try my journey at home, because I discovered more than 12 months into my journey. And 12 months was when we were like committed this deep, right?
Right.
Taken money from friends, mom and dad, so your commitment level is 100% by that time. So the reason I say that is it's then that I discovered that there's 2 unicorns in our space. Didn't do any market research. When we discovered that no end user's problem was solved. That was our market research.
Right.
Didn't do any. And the logic was, look, if everyone's problem is unsolved, doesn't matter what software exists in the market, right?
True.
It's not doing the job.
True.
But again, this is not the approach I'll suggest to anybody. And we discovered, I think, somewhere in the 12th to 18th month of our journey, that there's actually 2 unicorns in our space already, and then tons of other competition. The one benefit of this was everything we built was built first principles.
Right.
We were not looking at anybody. It's so easy to see a wildly successful unicorn and say, how do I get better than him or her? And
yes,
you essentially already set your flow, right? And that's not like recipe for greatness. So
yeah,
we just built everything first principles, and some of the things our product still does, like a very unique journey-based approach, which everyone starts to do, but nobody was doing it early. Everyone built a survey engine. We built a customer journey engine, right? Everyone built a survey platform that aggregated results, and then you saw some dashboards. We built our entire dashboard that what's the quantification of delight? If you can measure it, you can track, analyze, and improve it, right? And all our data and visualization flows backwards from a number or an outcome, right? And it flows backward. If you take these two elements, you realize how different we are technologically, product-wise from anybody in competition. So ignorance was definitely bliss for us, but I do not recommend it for everybody.
and this is a very interesting point you're making. So typically, the whole narrative about analytics today is you dig a big mass of data, right? And your approach was build on the little ones and build it up and see what picture is emerging, right? So you start with the individuals and you aggregate them rather than take the aggregate and drill down to the individual.
No, great point. So just to go deeper into that, a lot of people, the focus has been on, obviously, and we do that now, like individual customer journeys, what's your journey, and so on and so forth. But what the approach we took was, how do we do like the greatest good for the greatest number? So we believed in anonymized, aggregated analytics, at a mass level. Because if you see market research, n equal to 100, right? 1,000.
Yeah.
And you use that n equal to 100 or 1,000, and then you build a model for millions of people. If you can take that n into hundreds of thousands or millions, right? You're building statistical models which are very accurate. So that was the approach we took. If we allowed you to engage any customer on any channel at any time, you made it very easy for people to, not very easy, sorry. You created analytics that had real depth and insight, as opposed to extrapolating what you learned from 100 or 500 people. And that democratization of customer engagement along the entire journey, along any channel for the customer, is how we believe we create much better analytical models around what do customers want, what is their propensity. If you did this, how are they likely to react? And that's really, I think, where we try to differentiate as much as possible.
So you're like 12 months into the journey. Where have you reached by now? So it's like end of 2014, I'm assuming, or early 2015.
Yeah. So by end of 2014. So by end of the year, I've reached the end of all my friends who can give me money to fund the company. And then I've reached a point where I definitely need some outsider to come in and invest in the company. Now, where we are is we have two things that we are very proud of. One, an early team, which was absolutely stellar. Like if you take Vijay, who I call the spiritual founder of the company, you take Prem, who built the brand CloudCherry, if you take Sudha and Femil, like the first 2 developers who came on the system, and we added 2-3 more people. Like I mentioned them by name because it was really some individuals, right? And Selva, who was our first admin person, we call him Chief Happiness Officer, right? So the small core team of people on day one built something that was very, very valuable. The product, and obviously I keep forgetting that my co-founder, who's the chief technology architect, he's someone who never comes in meetings, and the joke is he real? Because he doesn't believe in in-person interaction or coming into meetings. And Nagendra, he architected the entire platform. So you can imagine just a handful of people, right? But great culture, absolute commitment to getting stuff done. And I believed in our first pass, we actually built a really good, highly customer intuitive product. So end of year one, no money, running out of sources of funding, but a really good product, a couple of very good early adopters, and a team that was essentially willing to do anything and work without pay for the cause. So that's what we had at the end of year one.
How did this team come together? I mean, it looks like, I mean, you mentioned serendipity in the beginning of the chat. There are a lot of serendipities. So how did you get such motivated people together? Because I guess that's one of the biggest challenges of any startup, right?
No, absolutely. So it started with Sriram, my cousin who ran Great Lakes, right? He started with me, and I said, "Hey, thousands of MBAs. How come I'm the founder for the startup you want to start?" and a founder and CEO. And anyway, he had his own incredible logic. So it started there, but simple for the first few people. Vijay, who conceptualized the idea on day one, right, managed to build a prototype of a product with two developers who were both first job developers, right? So Sudha and Femil. And you look at a person who has an idea can take two young developers, and those two young developers can actually build a functioning product. We re-architected it and all that. That's fine. These are people who can get stuff done, and there's such a insane premium for people who can get stuff done, right? So that's the core group. When we started the company, we inherited, right? Prem, my friend who was our brand guy, for years and years he'd been telling, look, he was working in marketing and he's in advertising rather, and like, let's start something. So you knew he was ready to take the entrepreneurial plunge, right? The Nagendra was a co-founder and architect. He was a co-founder of the previous startup I worked in.
Okay.
And he had left a few years ago, and I knew him as probably the most savvy technology architect on the planet. And I think now, how many years later after meeting him, 16th year into knowing him, my opinion remains unchanged. So you knew you needed somebody to architect brilliance. And the first 2 or 3 people who came to us came by referral. So there was a lady who used to work on my team in the previous startup. She said her sister's just finished her graduation. She's looking for a job. I'm like, ask her to come over. She walked in, and that day we had to test one app that was going out. We told her, can you sit for 2 hours and test this app? And she never left, and she's still with us, and she's stellar, right? And Selva, who's the chief happiness officer, came by recommendation. A friend of mine said, I have this great admin guy. He has only one flaw. I'm like, what's his flaw? He's too honest. I'm like, geez, okay, send him over. And these are all people who are still with the team, still, like the core development team. And so that's how the core sort of first 6 or 7 people built. And then we added a phenomenal set of second layer of people. But this was the first 6 or 7 people. My joke always is that they walked in the door. I don't know how, like some were reference, network, some who heard the story from somebody else. I remember we hired one person who was one of our early investors' son, who studied in a very good engineering college in Chennai called SSN. And he came, he was fantastic. And he shared photos about the day in the life of a startup, the cricket we played on the terrace, the work we did. And before you knew it, all the smartest kids at SSN in that batch wanted to join us. So we had really smart, young 21, 22-year-olds who had job offers from very large companies who just said, I want to work in the startup. And our office was nothing to write home about. This is not some glamorous startup office. This was a really rundown home that we were using as an office. But these young guys and girls would want nothing but to work for that startup. So as I said, the best people walked in somehow.
Awesome. That's fascinating. So back to 2015, you are running out of cash and you need to raise money. What happened?
So Sriram connected us to Chennai Angels. And so I went in to pitch at the Chennai Angels meeting, and great things happened there. One, obviously the Chennai Angels put their hand up and said, we want to invest in you. But in the room, you also had IDG Ventures, which is now Chirate. So immediately after the meeting, they came out and they said, okay, no games here. We want to invest in your company. Let's meet this afternoon. Let's discuss terms. And I would love to tell you a story of struggle, but they liked what they saw, and we discussed terms. We did a little bit of ping pong, but we essentially had a term sheet at the end of the day.
So who were you talking to in IDG Chirate? Who was the person?
TC Meenakshi Sundaram.
Okay,
he was on
Meenakshi.
my board.
Yeah.
He sat on our board till the exit, and it was great. I mean, though I'll tell you, I understated, but the year preceding that was pretty intense because every month some friend invested in the company to allow us to make that month's payroll. And I remember October of 2014 was it? We paid our salaries like on the 17th of the month or something like that. And these are guys who had bills to pay and stuff like that. So it was definitely quite a grind, but those early days taught our team things that money can't, right? But yeah, so I went, and Chennai Angels and IDG were the first institutional investors, external investors in the company.
I'll come back to your cap table and how you manage that in a little later, because if you have lots of people who have invested and then institutional investors come in, it poses some basic problems and challenges. But how much did you raise between the Chennai Angels and IDG?
It was close to $1 million. Yeah, and by the way, in parallel, I think it was the same round. We used to go out in the market a lot, and we met the founders of Capillary. So I met Anish at Capillary, and we pitched essentially that, look, your product does not have this capability, and we should go to market together. That was the essential pitch. And I remember running a demo for Anish. And then Anish, again, very straight shooter. He's like, we really like your company. Can we invest in the company? And, whatever. And that worked too. So to the best of my knowledge, they also invested in the same round. And it was $1 million round back in, this was 2015,
right?
Yeah, early 2015.
Okay. Yeah. And that, given your current burn at that stage, what kind of a runway was it providing, this 1 million? I mean, there must have been a reason why you raised $1 million and not more.
Yeah, no, I think you have to understand, see, as first time SaaS founders, right? Again, back in 2015, with when I say early revenue, it's essentially two guys who are ready to pay you, right? I mean, that's almost zero revenue, correct? $1 million seed was a significant number. So we didn't know any better. We structured it and it seemed like the right number. There was not too much science to it, to be honest. But the burn before that was way less because very small team, hardly any marketing budgets and so on and so forth. Everyone was taking very nominal salaries. And I think the model we built was for 24 months of runway with that initial funding, which we ended up in the second half of that spending money a little faster. But it essentially was that. Actually, towards the end, we saw green shoots of success in the US go-to-market. We went back to IDG. I think they did a bridge. And we essentially said, okay, let's agree on some milestones. Let's do a bridge, which is essentially a convertible on the next round. And that worked out. We did the bridge. We raised a Series A, and this bridge was rolled into that Series A. But yeah, that's how we capitalized the company.
And by the time so between the seed and the Series A, how much time had elapsed?
So seed was, let's assume, I think Jan 2015, if I'm not wrong, approximately. Series A was in the middle of 2016. Or second half of 2016. I know I'm blanking out on dates, but it seems like it was a lifetime ago. But I think it was 2016, middle of 2016. Let's say summer of 2016. Yeah.
And how large was that? The Series A?
That was a $6 million round. That was a $6 million round. So we went out to raise 5. We met with Vertex. We had a couple of other folks. We love the team at Vertex. IDG also co-invested, obviously, in that round, much more than Prorata. But interestingly enough, we also had Cisco investments come in then. So we met the Cisco folks. They obviously were market leaders in the contact center business. And they said, look, customer experience is an adjacency for us. So we'd like to invest in the company. So that $5 million round became 6 with Cisco. So that's how we raised the Series A, which was 6 million, 2016, middle of 2016.
So by this time, have you shifted to the US or are you still in Chennai?
I'm still in Chennai. So this was,
Okay. And so 2 quick questions. One is that you said when you did the seed, you had 2 companies who were willing to pay you practically very small revenue. Where have you reached in terms of revenue at this point, by the time you're doing Series A?
So Series A, again, because of the exit, we're not disclosing some revenue numbers, but Series A, we were still, I think, a sub $1 million ARR. We were still fairly low, fairly early revenue. No, that time it was in India. So you can imagine that our ACVs would not be more than $10,000 or $20,000 because India ACVs aren't very high, right? So it was not very high. When we did our Series A, I think we had some very few SMB customers in the US, a handful. And it was essentially a hypothesis that we could scale that market. Turns out we do a Series A and we never scaled that market. We realized in hindsight, it seems almost silly that we think that was the market and enterprise and mid-market was not. But at that time, we thought we were going to scale the global SMB business, much like Freshworks or somebody's got done. But that was the hypothesis on which it was done. And interestingly enough, as we moved to the US, barring a very small core of customers, we essentially restarted the company early 2017 when I moved to the US and we launched our go-to-market in US and Singapore. We essentially like reset the book, so to speak.
Okay, so just to understand, between the seed and the Series A, you are still primarily selling to the Indian market.
Absolutely.
And so how many companies? So if it is at 20,000, it's 100,000 for 5. So you had roughly about 50 customers. I'm just saying, give and take.
You can say 30 to 40 customers approximately.
Okay. So some of them are spending a little more, maybe. And these are all Indian companies who are spending most of them, except those 5.
Except, as I said, just before the Series A, we started some US SMB acquisition. So if you keep that bucket aside, which is a very different hypothesis, the majority of customers, not all customers actually were India or South, like there's somebody in Sri Lanka or whatever, but essentially India enterprise. Yeah.
Okay. And what kind of companies were these?
So I can take some names like Titan. Titan was our first enterprise customer. They're still our customer. So it's good to have a customer from 2015. I think it was 2015 we started with them. Titan maybe even started in 2014. 2014 and all the way to 2021. They're still a client of ours.
Nice.
So Titan, there were a lot of F&B chains. We believed that F&B and hospitality would be our customers. So we went after a lot of small restaurant chains in India, a lot of Chennai-based chains, I remember. We worked with like the Cinnamon Grand in Colombo. So again, mistakenly, we thought that F&B and hospitality will be our number one sort of customer base. And we were so wrong. It was not.
So these are very interesting points because this is the core of this whole product market fit discussion, right? So you go with an assumption, and even your first example of how your partner actually built the product and his hypothesis that one restaurant, and you see. So I can see the connect between that and this. Having said that, how did you discover? I mean, obviously, your assumption that you'll go to SMBs, which was again influenced by the environment in Chennai, because a lot of success between Zoho and Freshworks in the SMB market globally. So I can see the connects. What happened when you came to US?
It's time for a short break. I asked Vinod about how his team at CloudCherry reached the crucial product market fit and how their initial assumption of being focused on the hospitality industry all but didn't take off. With that, he landed in the US trying to target the SMBs. When we get back from the break, you will hear Vinod describe how that went. Stay with us.
You are listening to a Business Podcast Network original. Podcasting is the fastest growing content marketing opportunity, which is untapped. We can help you craft your audio strategy and help leverage the wide reach and easy streaming capability that the smartphone penetration provides. It is easy, it is powerful and personal. Talk to us to find out how podcasting can help you build your brand and reach out to your targets like never before. Write to us at bpn@bizcast.in. That is bpn@bizcast.in. Business Podcast Network. Podcasts end to end.
Welcome back. I'm Shubhanjan Sarkar, your host for SAAStories and founder of PitchLink, the buyer-seller engagement platform. Right before the break, I asked Vinod how their quest for product market fit was going with their focus on SMBs as they started their journey in the US.
What happened when you came to US? I mean, you came to build this SMB business, right? You'll be now going to thousands of SMBs who are sitting in US, more friendly to using technology and so on. That was the hypothesis you were going with. You're still going with, okay, primarily hospitality, F&B. What happened?
See, when we later went to banking and retail and all of that, and I have a hypothesis and I'll tell you the difference. And it's my own homegrown hypothesis. So it may entirely be false and someone may call me out and I'm comfortable being called out. But the US move was actually very simple. So we moved to the US. Cisco had invested in us. We saw huge potential in the go-to-market with Cisco. And it only seemed fair that I come to the Bay Area where the tech ecosystem is broader, right? Can be closer to the team at Cisco, explore a go-to-market. We had a Microsoft go-to-market in Southeast Asia that we wanted to expand to the US. US obviously was the largest market. Those were like macro things that we were following. But the SMB hypothesis came under, if I tell you in hindsight, we'll seem pretty naive. When you look at customer experience management, right? Tracking the journey of the customer and insight and analytics, that doesn't seem like an SMB product. SMB product is feedback, right? Just simple survey engine, right? Which is if a customer comes, send a feedback link, see if they're happy, unhappy. If they post a bad review, maybe try to apologize, And yet when we were doing it ourselves, we didn't see that was the case, right? Because everyone responded positively to the product. And then we realized but that does not mean they need it, right? Everyone will like the Ferrari when you show it to them, but not everyone will buy it, right?
Absolutely.
And it's not a factor of money. I mean, the point I was also trying to make is if you run a farm and you live in the hills, you may have the money, right? But the Ferrari is not the right car for you. So the point also is not just about the category having the money or not. It's also about whether it was right for them. Anyway, so I go there. We have one mid-market customer, which is a credit union customer. We had one customer in the US, I think paying us $30,000 or $40,000 a year. Closed on the phone, came inbound. So we said, hold on, like if someone can pay, like if you have to do a $10,000 outbound 12-month sales cycle deal, and you can have a $40,000 inbound, 1-month sales cycle deal, what are you going to choose, right? You're going to choose the latter. So that's how I moved to the US.
Okay.
That was the origin of it. You had a two-part question. Okay, the second part, okay, the market. So my hypothesis, again, homegrown, is this. If you look at F&B and hospitality, a lot of the operators are people who came from the industry, right? Like there are GMs of hotels I know who worked as a management trainee there, right? They scrub the floors. They've come bottom up. So we've had large hospitality chains, though that's different, though a lot of hospitality chains globally use analytics platforms. A lot of them say, no, I know each and every one of my customers, right? I understand this, whatever, better. And I realized that we were selling the need for analytics to some of them, right? You go to a retail or financial services, especially financial services, or services like telecom, airlines, right? A lot of the leaders are very left-brained, very analytical, typically an MBA, right? And they're like, where's my data? Where's my cohort analysis? What are my customers saying, right? Can you show me trending information? Can you give me predictive analytics? And we realized that these industries were craving analytics-rich solutions at that time, right? Today, the world may be whatever. Like that time, we believed India didn't give enough revenue. And now we are seeing mega large customer experience deals in India. So everything is in at that point in time.
Right.
So but that was validated. Now our number one customer base, I think, is financial services. Number two is what I would call services, which is telecom, airlines, anything to do with the delivery of services, right? Where, and I think, and retail is third or whatever, but like hospitality and whatever, not even in the picture. Healthcare is emerging. So you can imagine how the world has changed for us.
Right. So what was the difference? The difference was trying to sell somebody the need for analytics to somebody who already understood that, and they were already sort of, oh, where is my data? So that was the line.
Exactly right. And then we went to a point wherein anytime you find yourself in a pitch where we're trying to sell the concept to somebody, step back, walk away, right? A startup cannot create a market. You can only go and try to be the fastest, the best, the most likable, the best customer experience delivery in an established market. So we chose not to pitch to anybody who was trying to get us to validate the need for the product.
Yeah. That's a great point. So I think a lot of time you get so taken by your idea and you get so influenced by the thought that you need to put a dent in the world and so on, that you lose sight of what is feasible and what is not. I mean, I understand. I mean, those kind of things are there, but yeah. So how large is your sales team by then?
Still very small. We were building an inside sales team out, which by then was, I think we had an inside sales leader based out of Bangalore, and she ran a team with 4 inside sales people. We had an enterprise sales team of 2-3 more people. So I moved to the US in April of 2017. I've had one sales leader in the US. So let's take a snapshot on April 2017, because I hired a US revenue leader. She hired 3 salespeople in Salt Lake City. So that's 4 people sales focused in the US. We have one of our best sales reps go to Singapore and he set up our Singapore sales. We had a couple of more field sellers in India. And then we had 3 or 4 inside sales sellers who were focused on the US. This is mid 2017 approximately.
Why Singapore? That was one question I had in my mind. You said US and Singapore. Why Singapore?
Yeah, again, when I now go and talk to teams around product market fit, how we found product market fit was absolutely the wrong way to do it. How we went about our go-to-market and market expansion, absolutely wrong. So when I tell you the story, know that it's a statement of fact, not an endorsement of how you should go about building a business. But Singapore is actually pretty simple. I was going to the US absolutely on a hunch, right? With one reference customer. We didn't even know, and that's where the 2 unicorns were, and 8 or 9 other companies. So we didn't even know if we'll get another customer ever. And we had no sales and marketing machinery focused in that direction. So huge risk that was entailed with that. Singapore, actually, interestingly enough, the anchor to that move was our investor Vertex. Vertex, that fund was entirely backed by Temasek.
Okay.
And they were and still, I would say, proved to be great investors. They opened doors for us. They called CEOs of banks and leaders of large companies who were in their portfolio or in their network, and they said, we've invested in a great company because we believe the companies we know or invest in should also use this product. And they opened doors for us. So invaluable help from there, and it worked out, right? If that wasn't there, it was probably a bad idea to open 2 markets at the same time.
Just so that I understand, these investments are all happening in the Indian company.
So we basically had a Delaware HQ. The company was headquartered in Delaware, and India was a subsidiary. So all investments, everything was happening in the US HQ company.
You mentioned inside sales a few times, and so this I'm assuming was there from the beginning. You also said that your first large customer came inbound. So what were you doing in terms of content and marketing at this stage? What were you doing for the visibility, for generating interest, apart from, and what was the inside sales team doing? How were they approaching? I mean, I understand if your, for example, target was F&B, they were possibly calling and trying to set appointments for you or whoever else is fronting it at that point of time for those companies. So what was going on there?
See, at that time, we were obviously focusing a lot on SEO. We started focusing very heavily on getting G2 Crowd reviews. We realized that peer reviews were very valuable. Again, this is 2017. It evolved a lot in 2018 and 19. We also used the partner channel effectively. Like the Microsoft go-to-market was a very significant go-to-market for us. Right. You realize that through Capillary, so Capillary as a partner, Microsoft as a partner, we found large enterprise introductions happening that way. But from a digital perspective, heavy focus on content. So our whole nurture path was around, look, 2 things. One, you take people who believe in CX already on a nurture path, which essentially was, I understand the need for CX. Current platforms are cumbersome, very expensive. How can I get a platform that is very visual, intuitive, easy to use, and doesn't cost me my left kidney? Our first US customer actually came in and said, we liked what we saw on the website, and our team immediately ran a demo saying, let me show you the product. And then they had questions and they answered the question on a demo. Oh, you want to do this? Click, look, this can be done. Everything else they had seen were very large stage demos. Like you had to prepare for a demo. And then obviously they said, look, the nearest product we saw that could do what you're doing is many times your cost. They said not a few percentage points, is many times as expensive as yours. So this is incredible. Like we can't believe that something this good is available at that price point. That was literally the single data point which we used to go into the credit union space in the US. Because we said, hey, one credit union feels the pain. There's 7,000 out there. Others will too. And that actually worked out pretty well for us.
Right. So partnerships with Microsoft and Cisco and Salesforce, these are the 3 partnerships that you talk of, right?
So we had a So obviously, Microsoft, we are actually still, CloudCherry is still in the one commercial partner program. And we were a tier one partner in Southeast Asia, which essentially meant that we got privileged go-to-market access. If you saw our customer testimonial video on the website at that time, it was produced by Microsoft. We had access to their Salesforce. We had a partner manager who essentially was helping us navigate the Microsoft ecosystem. That was a very good go-to-market. Cisco, interestingly enough, we made the most go-to-market progress after we got acquired. But with Salesforce, we had a couple of execs who loved our platform. We were on the App Exchange. We had a partner manager. But at some time in 2018, we looked at the whole ecosystem and we said Microsoft actually is giving us the best traction. So we focused on the Microsoft go-to-market much more than the other platforms.
Right.
And at that time, that was actually the right decision for us to make. But one thing I've learned with BizDev is that they don't give you direct results. You need to have a lot of effort and energy spent in a lot of avenues before you find one or two that really work for you. So sometimes it can also burn a lot of your time, and you have to be very mindful of how much time you spend on that.
At what point were you sort of getting these feelers that you may get acquired, and what were your thoughts at that time as founders?
So I've always found that any situation dealing straight and transparent as opposed to through a playbook or is better because you don't know any better, right?
Yeah.
So a few things were happening in our space. Qualtrics had this mega acquisition by SAP. Medallia was going public. Some of the other vendors, like I think Satmetrix got acquired by NICE. Vovici or somebody got acquired by somebody, but got acquired.
Yeah.
And a couple of smaller vendors got acquired by larger vendors. So there was so much consolidation happening in our space. And there were two unicorns. So my thought was, and when I say unicorns, like, Qualtrics, I think the acquisition was $8-9 billion, and Medallia's IPO was $5-6 billion. So these are not unicorns. You can call them techacons, right? At least most way there. So the point was, you have to forward project and read the tea leaves. I always say, which is, what is the most likely outcome for my company in my space? Now, these companies, to the best of my knowledge, from the public information that I saw in the S1s, took 19 and 20 years to get to, I think, 300 million of revenue, approximate, right? Give and take a year, give and take a few 10 millions of dollars. And the world was accelerating so fast that the next 300 million would have to be generated in 2 years, right? Or 1.5 years. So for me, the little decision matrix was, hey, highly competitive space, lots of consolidation happening. You'll need an incredibly high amount of capital, right? Because folks have taken 18, 20 years to come to 300 million, now going public, raising hundreds of millions of dollars or getting acquired and then inheriting hundreds of millions of dollars of sales and marketing, right? You can't. So we had raised $9 million round before that. We're like, the next round has to be a $50 million round. And that's to play catch up, right? And we were growing really fast, right? We had, again, I know we don't share absolute numbers because of the acquisition, but we had 10x growth in little over 2 years, right? So we were growing really fast, right? So we had good months and bad months, make no mistake. If you met someone who worked at CloudCherry, they'll talk about, brutal months and heartbreak and this and that. But the fact was, as a startup, we were still growing really well, right? The problem is, as a high growth startup, you can't be comfortable with your growth rate. So anyway, so when you look at all of that as a founder, you know that M&A is probably a more likely outcome for your business than a standalone path to IPO. If you get that wrong, you raise another round of money and you build. And when you've loaded on 70, 80, 90, $100 million in a company and realize you have no path to being a $5-10 billion company, you realize that you'll barely, if you're lucky, manage to give investors back their money, right? And make no money for any other stakeholders. So you have to take a call. Access to capital is not why you should take capital.
Right.
The belief that capital will allow you to create, at that round, if you take $50 million, you must create 50 to 75 million of incremental ARR at least, right? If not more. So when you put that together, we realized that, the acquisition offer came, that we didn't take the first one. And sure enough, this was Jan. Sure enough, by June, it came again.
This is 2018. 2018 or 2019?
19, sorry, 19, yeah.
Okay.
And the second one came, And we obviously, by then, three potential acquirers knew us really, 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 really well, right? And I can't disclose for confidentiality.
Sure.
Like some had some sort of an engagement with us, some had whatever. So the moment this came, and this was a credible offer, and it had a 2 week, for a certain reason, had a 2 week timeline to it. Like we want to finish this in the next 2 weeks and announce it. So we knew. I essentially texted all our other potential acquirers saying, okay, something's come again, and we intend to take it. And sure enough, in 24 to 36 hours, we had two other acquirers who said we want to do it. And somebody else who didn't know us came to us through a banker who had met us in the past. And they were looking at companies in the space, and someone said CloudCherry is the best company. So they didn't know us at all. But because somebody else had validated us, they came and they said, hey, they came on the last day of the process. And they said, give us a week, we'll give you a term sheet. But by then we were a day away from signing our term sheet. So we told them, we politely declined, and we are too far out in the process. We don't want to add on the week. But we essentially texted our outbound process for getting acquired was essentially 2 text messages, which was the 2 other acquirers basically.
Just to go a little bit back, in 2018, you did a major reshuffle of your cap table, and especially for the founders. What really happened there?
When series, you can call it A plus or B, we had some, I forget what was the funny reason.
This is the $9 million round, right?
$9 million round. So in that round, we had Pelion Ventures that came in, Salt Lake-based fund, some of the finest people I've met. And their hypothesis was, if this founding team has to be incentivized to run this for 5 more years or 10 more years or whatever have you, at this stage of the company, we want the cap table to look like X, right? I obviously can't go into details. And that entailed, their belief was that the founder, myself, should have more equity. And their thing was, we need to recap and we need to make sure that we create a larger ESOP pool. This is not unusual, by the way. Like friends of mine who are raising capital, they come in and say, investors come in all the time and say, here's a term sheet, but in the post-money cap table should have X% ESOP pool, right? So that recap essentially was around giving more money to the founding, more equity to the founding team. And truth be told, all our investors supported it. Like even though everyone, including us, was diluting towards that ESOP pool, right? Then of course, some of us were getting paid out disproportionately. But all our investors realized that for the long-term health and sustenance of the company, it's a good thing to do. So it was not strife. Everyone, obviously there's some conversation around dilution, but everyone rallied for the cause and we did it.
Okay. And
but also that the lesson for me is you get your cap table right the first time around. Like I always tell founders, think through 5 rounds of dilution at, let's say, 25% dilution each, right? Then do the math around what percentage of the company you own. And then tell me, will you give your life for that percentage of equity in a company? If the answer is yes, then you're capped right. If the answer is no, then you probably need to make sure your capitalization is correct.
Right. So how much were you still holding when you got acquired, the founding team?
I don't think we're at liberty to disclose exactly, but if you see founding team, if you see all the early people who were part of the journey in the first half, first year or 2 of the company, if you consolidate all of that, I think it was, to the best of my knowledge, 45-50%. So it is reasonable.
That's pretty good. That's great. So now Cisco has happened. We are at that point in time. What were your expectations?
So, it might sound like a speech, but I'll be honest. Like I had dealt with folks at Cisco for 3 years since the 2015, late 2015, I think, when we started talking to them. They came on board in 2016, I think. Dealt with them across 2 rounds of fundraise, multiple other things. And I'm at N equal to like 50 or something. I said, look, if all people you met are high caliber, high integrity, good culture, maybe that's reflective of the broader org. It was a large enough sample size. So when I told you about another acquisition offer that came and we chose not to pursue that path, we're like, are you going to risk a deal that's on the table with a company you know really well for a company you don't at all, right? Now, obviously, if they come and offer 4x, it's a different story. But at best, they would match, right? And the point is, do you want to commit your team to working for many years in a team, company, and culture you don't know. I'm not saying it's bad. You don't know.
Yeah.
And the familiarity with Cisco work and culture, and obviously the terms and everything else, came together. So my optimization, to be honest, was, is this a place I can lead my people to, and they look back to me and say, thank you for getting us here? Or will they come out and say, man, where did you get us stuck, right? It obviously was the former. And that was a huge part of the deal for us. We dealt with Cisco very transparently. The process was transparent. And when I hear about the acquisition stories of some of the other people I know, I realize just how good and ethical the Cisco acquisition, process is. So I optimize for that, and I'll be honest. Like 15 months later, I think I made many mistakes building CloudCherry. The acquisition and the choice of acquirer, I think I got bullseye on.
That's great. That's great. So what now? I mean, where do you project yourself and the CloudCherry journey, say 3 years down the line? I'll not say 5 years. It'll be too tough, I guess.
Yeah, 5 is a long time. Nobody knows where the world is in 5 years' time. So right now, to be honest, at Cisco, I do two things. I continue to build CloudCherry and the version 2 of what CloudCherry is supposed to be, a complete customer journey platform that we're building here. But I also run the go-to-market for Cisco's contact center business. So that is a job and a half in itself.
Right.
But I also get the joy of running my own startup for the most part myself. So to my mind, I think we are really excited about what the convergence of customer experience and contact center are doing. So we recently announced, we called it customer experience as a service along the entire customer journey, right? So definitely, if I were to take a 1-year punt, like 2021, my team is heads down in building the next generation of experience management. How to go, now we are going to n equal to 1 into the individual customer journey. To your point, right? Which is, how do I track your individual journey? How do I track everything about your journey? How do I proactively redress your issue along your journey? How do I keep you on what we call the happy path, right? Which is, I know at this step you're likely to leave or get unhappy or abandon your quest, right? How do I nudge, offer the right content or escalation to keep you on the happy path to transaction? Essentially, did I get what I want? Was it easy for me to get it? Did I feel good doing the transaction, right? So how to keep you on the happy path? And that's really what the whole team is immersed in. My firm belief is that what we have as the result of the acquisition and what the team is now building will be at the heart of the Cisco's customer experience / contact center business for many, many years to come. So I don't know how long the journey is, but I sincerely hope a decade down the line, we are still seen as pivotal to what happened to the Cisco contact center business. So right now, to be honest, we are really inspired by that mission. It seems almost startup-like. And we're as excited to build it as we were when we were at CloudCherry.
SAAStories is brought to you by PitchLink, the buyer-seller engagement platform. PitchLink enables high-quality interactions between buyers and sellers through presentation and discussion modules. Sellers create personalized sales presentations and reach out to prospects through a non-intrusive, buyer-qualified engagement. PitchLink requires no installation or download and holds the entire repository of sales collaterals and buyer-seller conversation. Talk to us to know more about how you can engage with customers without intrusion. Call us on 990-216-3132. That is 990-216-3132.
Wonderful. That's a great note to end this on, and I'm really thankful that you took out so much time in the evening for a day of work. Thanks, Vinod. I'll be in touch, and thank you very much. I'll keep you informed what's going on. Okay.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Take care, Samir.
Bye. Bye.
We have a fantastic lineup over the next couple of episodes with great conversations with Alex Thuma, the founder of SAAStock, the largest SaaS show out of Europe, and Jeffrey Potvin, investor and founder of Open People Network, a group of angel investors based out of Toronto. Subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you do not miss a single episode. Thanks for listening. Thank you for being with us today and listening to this episode of SAAStories. This is where I speak with the dreamers and visionaries who dared to think ahead and build world-class SaaS products. We hope this conversation helped you with the insights that you can go and apply right now to your own SaaS journey. We hope to have you here with us again in the next episode of SAAStories. SAAStories is brought to you by PitchLink, the buyer-seller engagement platform. SaaS Insider, the definitive community for global SaaS, and is a Bizcast original production.